call this Thursday, December 13th, 2018, meeting of the Fayetteville Public Schools Board of Education to order. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I know we have some virtual kids who are actually here, so in person. So why don't you guys come on forward? And Jay, if you want to, do you want to bring your group up here? You guys come form us in a circle.
Tell them your name, your grade.
Hi, my name is Sophie Moody, and I'm in 7th grade.
I'm Katie Palmer, and I'm in 8th grade.
I'm John Layton, and I'm in the 5th grade.
I'm Crawford Murphy, and I am in the 6th grade.
I am Ira Palmer, and I am in the 6th grade. Can everybody please follow us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Let them file out and do roll call. Valen.
Justin Eichmann.
Here.
Tracy Farah. Nika Waitsman.
Here.
Tim Hudson.
Here.
Bob Moranto.
Here.
Megan Hurley.
Here.
Keaton Smith.
Here.
Our recognition agenda tonight is short. Now, we've got some news today about some award winners today that we will recognize in January. But for tonight, we have our Above and Beyond Awards that are presented by the Education Committee of the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, and Kirby Harris is here to do the honors.
Will Holly Smith join us at the front? She is an academic interventionist at Root Elementary School, and one of her colleagues wrote the following. I believe that Holly is one of the most selfless employees at our school. She is always willing to lend a hand, mentor, and serve those at Root, especially the students. She's a woman who wears many hats, but always has one of the most positive demeanors. As a new employee in FPS, she ended up being a mentor to me and helped guide me in my first year of teaching, especially in literacy. I know I speak for our school when I say that we wouldn't be as successful as a school family without the contribution that Holly makes daily for us. And a second nomination from a Root parent reads, this one's really good. My daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia and severe ADHD almost 2 years ago when she was in 2nd grade. She could not read or write at the time and was basically on a kindergarten level. Once she was diagnosed, my husband and I started taking her to a tutor in Rogers for her dyslexia 3 times a week so she could do the Take Flight program. We would take our lunch hours to do this. Our daughter made some progress at that time. However, last year when Mrs. Smith started at Root and started working with her is when we started to see the most progress. We stopped having to travel to Rogers and just let Mrs. Smith work with her at school. Our daughter could finally read and write. She is in the 4th grade this year, still working with Mrs. Smith, but the amazing thing is that she is on a 4th grade level in all of her subjects. Holly Smith's hard work and dedication to her students has made a difference in the lives of others. She makes it so much fun for our daughter. For her to bring a child from a kindergarten/1st grade reading level to a 4th grade level in a year is truly amazing. She loves to read now because of Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith has changed our daughter's life and her future. Congratulations.
And that's all the recognition agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ellen. Next, we have citizen participation, and this is a time period that we have at the beginning of our meetings for citizens to come up who are patrons of the district and talk to us about a school issue if they wish. I do have 2 forms. Is that correct, Ellen? We have 2. For this evening, I always like to go over what our policy states with regard to citizen participation before we begin. It's a 5-minute speaking time for each person on a school topic, not about a student or a member of our staff. But we're always happy to have people here who want to come and talk to us, and just understand it's your moment to say what you will, and to let us know what your thoughts are. There's not a give and take or a question and answer session. We'll take your comments, and of course always happy to talk to you after the meeting. So we do have two tonight, and the first one I have is Miss Isla Campbell. Is she or Miss Campbell?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll preface this by saying this was not on my December to-do list, okay? But a couple of weeks ago, I became aware of the policy now in place, which has effectively banned decorations and activities specific to Christmas in the Fayetteville Public Schools. This time of year is now to be celebrated as the winter season with more appropriate decorations such as snowmen, gingerbread men, snowflakes, children sledding, playing in the snow, that sort of thing. To verify this information, Dr. Colbert, I called and visited with you, and you explained that a policy which has been in effect for quite a few years was now just being enforced. You also cited the mission statement of the Fayetteville schools was to create a safe environment and an inclusive environment for all our students. And because all children may not celebrate Christmas or have a Christmas tree and decorations in their home, you run the risk of making those students feel excluded or uncomfortable if Christmas decorations are present in their schools. After I spoke with you, Dr. Colbert, I then emailed you, Mr. Eichmann, and told you of our conversation. And at that point, and with the conversation with Dr. Colbert, I also stated my opposition to this policy and that I would be asking the board to revisit this issue. Mr. Eichmann, your response was somewhat surprising because it appears that you and the board were unaware of this policy, which in effect banned Christmas trees and other Christmas decorations. Your statement to me was, and I quote, "To my knowledge, there is no school board policy pertaining to Christmas trees, and the school board has not taken any action regarding Christmas trees during the 8 years that I have now served." You then pointed out that there is a long-standing religion policy that deals with religion and religious elements in the school. I was later told that, in fact, this was the policy being used to initiate the Christmas trees and decorations from the schools, which would no longer be allowed. Mr. Eichmann, you assured me that such issues were not handled lightly, but instead are handled with care and with the best interests of the children in mind. And to quote you again, you concluded by saying, "The board was not involved with any recent matter dealing with Christmas trees, as such issues are typically administrative level and not the board." This was a little puzzling to me and a little troubling. A religion policy that has not been revised, it's my understanding, since 1994 is now in 2018 being implemented in such a way as to effectively ban from our schools everything pertaining to Christmas. My first question to the board and the administration is, why now? What precipitated such a change in the application of a 24-year-old policy? And just as troubling is my second question, why would such a change that truly carries huge implications for our school be considered just a matter as an administrative matter and not come before the board again? I read the religion policy, and my husband would say I might think I am, but I'm not a lawyer, okay? But it appears to me that the policy is written in such a way as to give great latitude as to how the policy is implemented. I would hate to think that for 24 years, the district has been out of compliance with its own policy. So again, I ask, why the change now? During my inquiries about this issue, the words inclusion and safe environment were often used. And as a retired history teacher of a world and American history, I was always striving to achieve just such a classroom environment. However, these words have been hijacked by the politically correct culture, whose stated goal of inclusion is actually achieved through the exclusion of any ideas, opinions, and perspectives that don't fit a certain agenda. The pressure on our schools to bend in this direction is overwhelming. The result of the politically correct approach is now being lived out for us all to see on college campuses, where students demand safe spaces to hide from opposing views, protest anyone who challenges their worldview, and has no respect for others and their right to freedom of thought and freedom of expression. As a retired teacher, I see this behavior as a colossal failure of our educational system. For I believe it's in the classroom where students should be encouraged to discuss their differences, to recognize and appreciate the customs and cultures of others, and to do so in a non-threatening and respectful way. Inclusion does not mean sameness, nor does it mean absence of differences. By using the Fayetteville religion policy to remove all symbols of Christmas, it appears that the administration proposes that this best protects students from feeling excluded and unsafe. Thanksgiving lessons this year were altered in the name of inclusion, and most of us have heard of the move to change the mascots of the Woodland Cowboys and the Ramey Indians that my children went to school here, all three of mine did. And all of this is in the name of inclusion and making students feel comfortable. The Fayetteville policy now bans Christmas trees and all things Christmas, yet the White House, our national and state capitals, shopping malls, downtown square Fayetteville, people's yards, people's homes, everywhere you look is filled with lighted and decorated trees. Judeo-Christian principles are the cornerstone of our judicial and legal systems, and Christmas is celebrated as a national holiday.
Ms. Gamble, we're over the 5 minutes. I was just letting you know.
Okay,
that,
can I just quickly finish?
Absolutely, yes.
I'm asking that our schools, our students, and our teachers and our staff be allowed to enjoy an established and cherished national holiday without fear of repercussions. I'm sure that those in charge that made this policy genuinely feel that it's right and legal, but I respectfully disagree and ask that you please give back to the Fayetteville schools Christmas and their Christmas trees. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. And the next one I have is for, is it Lynn Hullett?
I talk very fast, so I probably won't use my 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm not a talker speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I have had one phone conversation with Superintendent Colbert and appreciative of you returning my call and visiting with me on this matter. I am, however, to the rest of you, a complete stranger, and I have terrible stage fright, so I'll try to get through these 5 minutes. But I want you to have a personal point of reference as I take these minutes, and that is that I grew up in a home environment that's deeply supportive of our public schools. I continued that as an adult and parent, helping to establish the first partners in education for our elementary schools in our district. There was none. I served as the first president of that organization. We bought playground equipment. We met needs for teachers that didn't have money for resources. I love our public schools and believe that our community is only as strong as those. I'm here to discuss Christmas trees, or rather the absence of them, in our schools. We have many historical facts regarding our nation's history with the Christmas season. In 1856, President Franklin Pierce erected the first Christmas tree in the White House, and later in 1870, Christmas was declared a federal holiday. Today in Fayetteville, Arkansas, December 13, 2018, we still recognize December 25th as a national holiday. We call it Christmas. All government offices are closed in recognition of this holiday. A new Rasmussen poll, and I do have a copy of that should you want it, was published just yesterday in the Washington Times, and it shows that over 73% of all Americans support the celebration of the Christmas season, not based on faith views alone, but on secular preferences. That's a good poll to have. It's not 50-50, it's 73%. As I told Superintendent Colbert, he told me that this is enforcement of a religious policy the school board revised 24 years ago, but my response is that a Christmas tree is neither political nor is it religious in its identity, but it's a very joyful symbol of our nation's most special holiday and a part of our culture. The Supreme Court has considered many questions regarding the legalities of Christmas displays over the decades, but as I looked at this and researched the last couple of nights, it appears Justice Sandra Day O'Connor authored the opinion that's most looked to as the standard for determining the test for whether a display is constitutional. In that opinion written, and I'm not an attorney either, but I can read and I have a computer, written in 1989, she and the other justices concluded that the holiday season had, quote, attained a secular status in our society, unquote, with the Christmas tree as the season's, quote, preeminent secular symbol, unquote, and a teacher had her Christmas tree restored to her classroom. The Supreme Court has spoken on this, and my question to you tonight is, will you respond in compliance with that? As an adult, a parent, and a professional, I've often found myself rethinking a decision that did not have the intended result I desired, and perhaps that's what's happened here. Rather than this ban on Christmas trees being unified, it's my belief and my feeling that it's been divisive and it's been exclusive. And is that really the leadership and image we want to project for our school system? And I ask this question: how can you apply your own religious policy of a school system to ban something, namely Christmas trees, that have been deemed secular by our nation's highest court? I was loaded down with groceries shopping at Walmart last Friday, had my buggy filled. I was way at the back on Joyce. I was shopping for my 90-year-old parents and myself. I thought I heard live Christmas caroling. I thought, no, it can't be, but gosh, their sound system's good. Then I thought, well, no, somebody's got their phone on. Well, I kept thinking, okay, my buggy was loaded, but I thought, I don't want to go find where it is because I've still got to go peruse these aisles. I went up there, and there were a group of Walmart associates singing Christmas songs, and they had one of their leaders directing them. I had to see it for myself. A Hispanic lady next to me started recording it, and I looked at her and said, I'm recording this too. And when it was over, she looked at me, she goes, isn't this wonderful? And she went on to tell me how she'd not always been an American citizen, but she would tell me about her how she came to be. And it was just a few minutes before we didn't even know each other. She was a stranger to me, but in that moment we shared a moment of joy and conversation as fellow Americans enjoying a season. Isn't that what we want for us? Isn't that what we want going for us this season? While so much is out there to divide us, can't we just choose to go with what unites us? And I believe the presence of Christmas trees is a great unifier. You have amazing teachers in your classrooms. Trust them to make those students feel loved and appreciated and included. They're capable of doing that. It's not about a Christmas tree, but yet it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did not receive any other requests, and so I'm going to go ahead and close the citizen participation. Thank you both for speaking. Next, we have the board member liaison reports, and the one we have for tonight is Dr. Moranto and the Academic Advisory Committee.
I'm actually being kind of lazy, and it is that time of season. I'm going to just introduce Steve Weber to present it, especially since at the last Academic Advisory Committee meeting I had to be in Little Rock with you folks and not there, although the feedback I've heard has been great. And one part of feedback I want to add is that when I was at the ASBA meeting, I got to buttonhole Johnny Key for a couple minutes, and he immediately, and he recognized me, and he said, Bob, you know Steve Weber is doing an amazing job. And I said, I know that. We all know that. But I did not bring it up. He grabbed me, and that was the first thing he said to me. So I just thought I would pass that on at the risk of embarrassing Steve. And I think he sees some of what we're doing here in teaching and learning as a model for the state. So I think it's kind of cool.
Thank you for those kind words. Mm-hmm. The Academic Advisory Committee was formed this past spring, this past school year, and Dr. Morano and I have led each meeting, and Dr. Osterly and Ms. Hayward helped me with the meetings and with facilitation of the meetings. We have parents from all schools across the district, and there are two main goals. The first goal is to receive feedback from families on what we're doing with teaching and learning and what we hope to do in the future. And some of that isn't our goals, they come to us. So this past month or this past week, one of the activities was what I wish I knew. And so if you have a first grader, what do you wish you knew in kindergarten? We have families that have moved to our district from all over the world, and some people had basic things like, we'd like to know things about the community at kindergarten registration. It's not so much that we didn't know how to go to kindergarten on the first day, but we just moved here from another country to go to the University of Arkansas as a grad student, and there's a lot of things about Fayetteville that could just be included maybe from the city or from the chamber in a orientation package for families. Another thing people wanted to know more about was gifted and talented. I think sometimes we forget that people who have children or grandchildren in Fayetteville may know how the game is played, and we don't ever want to hear that our parents think it's a game, that if you know the rules to the game, you can get into GT or into other programs like special education, but if you don't know how to navigate the game, then you're on the outside looking in. That's not a customer-friendly approach. So some people talked about GT and special education services. English language learners, once again, how do we get services for our child? Who is the district contact? So we talked about kindergarten. We also talked about ninth grade. If it's your oldest child, sometimes that's a scary experience for parents, they said, to go from junior high to high school. It's a large high school. How does our child navigate? And we all know a ninth grader doesn't come home and say, Mom, Dad, this is what we do in ninth grade. They say, I don't know. So more information about how to help families as they transition to each building, and Ms. Hayward helped me facilitate that conversation. We also shared a brand new resource, and that is the brand new resource on our district's website, math resources for families and community partners. And as you know, as a board, this brand new resource helps people who are tutoring at the Boys and Girls Club, at the Yvonne Richardson Center and other community agencies. It also helps parents when their kid says, I don't know what we're doing in second grade math. They can just find that on the website. So the parents on the Academic Advisory Committee help us spread that message to people in their schools and their community, and they were excited about the new resource. So a great meeting, and we'll have 2 more meetings this spring. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Weaver. Bob, did you have anything to add, or is that pretty much?
No, other than the feedback I hear is that the work on the committees to reinvent the science curriculum in particular is going very well, and that I think over time it's going to have a huge impact. I think it's, again, it sounds kind of strange, but in this district, almost all districts, from what I've seen, there's generally not much communication from grade to grade on what concepts we need kids to know at what levels. And I think that we're actively fixing that here. Our own teachers are fixing it under the leadership of Steve and others. And I think that's something to be very proud of. It's going to make us great for years to come, I think.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great report. I think that was the last liaison report, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Colbert and Superintendent report.
Thank you, Ms. Dykeman, and to the board and to the citizens. Just 2 things. One, I do want to report that the mascot task force had their first meeting this past week. And, you know, that committee, you had charged me to form that committee. It's composed of teachers, coaches, students, and community leaders, both present students as well as alumni. So we have a very diverse group who's looking at that issue for us. It is chaired by Mrs. Holly Johnson, our Director of Communication, and also the former Dean of the U of A Law School, Dean Stacy Leeds. So they are leading that, and they are charged to bring back a recommendation to the board, and that should be taking place probably March or so. The other piece, I'd like to just use a video to show and celebrate a great semester of learning for all students that have taken place in the district. So I ask that you look at the video and see how students and staff members are engaged and how we have had a very successful semester. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to move on to the consent agenda tonight, and
Justin, if I could, it didn't make it on the agenda presentation. At the ASBA meeting, our own board president was recognized for attaining 200 or more than 200 hours of continuing ed or training, and so you're now at the, is it the platinum level?
I think it's Pinnacle is what it's called.
Pinnacle.
Yeah,
Pinnacle.
I think you're at the platinum level.
Platinum is when your
yeah,
beard gets really gray.
I think platinum's 500, and that
so
may be you.
You're at the pinnacle. I'm on the downhill side. But it's nice. There aren't that many board members throughout the state that have achieved 200 hours of the training that helps us do our jobs better and to serve the people of Fayetteville and the schools better. So
well, I remember. Thank you. Thank you. I remember every hour, so it's like it was yesterday. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is a consent agenda, and as usual, we can accept a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, or any board member can pull an individual item out for separate consideration. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board? This would be a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. All right, no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed say no. All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, next we have a presentation on career and technical ed. Is Lisa here? Oh, she's right there behind us. Sorry, I didn't see her behind us. I guess Dr. Weaver's going to come up.
As Mr. Eichmann mentioned, Lisa Hodson-Pillar is our Director of Career and Technical Education. Really proud of the work she's done over the past few years, and the program continues to grow under her leadership. And she's going to provide an update on our CTE program in Fayetteville Public Schools. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Mr. Eichmann, Dr. Colbert Board, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate the chance to get to shine a spotlight on career and technical education in Fayetteville Public Schools. We have some great things going on, and I'm so excited to be able to share this with you tonight. And this is a great, great time to be in career and technical education. Now, those of us in CTE, we understand that today's workplace requires a highly skilled workforce. But we also understand that we are preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist on this very day. So we have a very important task. We're forward-looking with everything that we do, and we offer many, many opportunities for our students here in Fayetteville Public Schools. Now, CTE, it prepares our students to be college and career ready, and it does that by providing core academic skills, employability skills, and technical job-specific skills. So we are doing everything we can to help these students become well-rounded individuals in order to be successful in their next steps. We're doing a lot of great things here in Fayetteville Public Schools, and on this slide, I'd like to just give you just a few snapshots of what we're doing. In the upper left-hand corner, that is our Workforce magazine. It's put out by the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. It will be distributed to all students in our district in grades 8 through 12. This magazine is going to focus on local industries here, right in Fayetteville, and it's going to provide students with information on job opportunities, job requirements, required skills, and salary and benefits information. We think this is going to be a good awareness piece to show our students there are ample opportunities here right in their backyard. Below that, or I'm sorry, to the right of that, you will see a shining example of our student involvement in career and technical student organizations. We fully encourage our students to be involved in a CTSO, career and technical student organization, in each of the program areas. We have 11 CTE program areas, and practically all of them have CTSOs. This young lady that you see here, she won 4th place in the nation this past summer in impromptu lesson planning at the Educators Rising Conference. So we love providing opportunities for our students like that because we think it's important for them to have the opportunity to take what they've learned in class and be able to put it on display in a nice, productive manner like that. To the bottom left, you will see it says we have 197 student completers. Now let me explain to you what a CTE completer is. It is a series of 3 courses prescribed by the Arkansas Department of Career Education that a student is to take in high school. I like to say it's like having a major in high school. It's a career focus for a student. This past year, we had 195 program completers recognized by the Arkansas Department of Career Education, and that was across our 11 CTE program areas. To the right of that, you will see a picture. That's from our Agri Night. Now, this was going long before I got here, and this has been a fantastic night because our agriculture department at Fayetteville High School, they absolutely make that a college and career ready night. They have individuals from business and industry there that are there to explain to the students who attend the opportunities and the skills required for getting a job. But they also have lots of colleges and post-secondary institutions who come and share information with students. We've even actually had students get scholarships on the spot that very night. So you talk about a powerful moment. That's just a shining example of CTE here. And then finally, in the upper right-hand corner, these are a list of industry certifications. I think these are probably some things that you will recognize. Last year, we only offered 4 industry certifications. But we've increased that, and I'm going to tell you more about that. Last year, however, we had 455 industry certifications earned. And this is in grades 8 through 12. We even had junior high students attaining industry certification. So, yet again, providing opportunities for our students, starting at the junior high level. One thing that we've worked to do is increase the awareness of career and technical education, and 2 things that have really become a focus for me this year to increase that awareness. One is called a Friday Flash. It's an electronic newsletter I send out every Friday. It has 5 visual highlights of the week of what has happened in career and technical education. I send that out to every career and technical education teacher in the district, every administrator, every counselor, and business and industry members. So it's a good awareness piece for us. On the right-hand side, we've fully embraced social media, and we are on Instagram and Twitter. That was intentional because we really wanted to let students know what's going on. So as you know, no students on Facebook, but they love Instagram and Twitter. So I've been very intentional to put that on Instagram and Twitter. Now, I am going to put us out on Facebook because, you know, the parents love Facebook and they need to see that. But I wanted to be really intentional about showing students what we were doing. This next slide shows you the breakdown. This is the number under each program area of a student taking at least 1 CTE course in that program area. Now, in some of these program areas, especially at the high school level, you will have students taking multiple courses, CTE courses. But this just gives you an idea of where our breakdown is. We have 11 program areas in grades 7 through 12, and we try to focus on high skill, high wage, high demand. That's what we try to do to be intentional in preparing our students for that. On the next slide, you're going to see just raw numbers. These are the number of students that are enrolled per school. Now, you will notice Ramey Junior High and Woodland Junior High. It appears they have every student enrolled in a career and technical education class. They do, because of 2 courses. At the 7th grade level, it's called Key Code, and that is a keyboarding course that also has the 5-week required state coding component in it. So every student is required to take that. Also, in 8th grade, every student is enrolled in career development. And we all know how important it is for the students to have that opportunity to explore careers, especially right before high school, because then we can capitalize on that and put them into the career and technical program areas that will really be beneficial to them. Excuse me. On the next slide, these are our program areas distributed across different buildings. So you will see we have some programs in every building in the district, and we offer multiple classes across every program area. Let me just reiterate, we are trying to form a close working relationship with business and industry. We want to make sure that what we teach our students is relevant in business and industry and that it's going to be acknowledged in the workplace. So all CTE teachers in the district, I've asked them to make one intentional contact a month with business and industry. So that can be them coming in as a guest speaker, that could be them meeting with them, but we're trying to draw a closer working relationship in that manner because we want to make sure that what we're doing is relevant and is going to help the kids with the next step. Also, one thing business and industry tells us is they need skilled workers, but they need workers with soft skills or professional skills. We've heard that repeatedly over and over. So I've asked the teachers to focus on 1 of 4 soft skills for the entire year. We can't teach soft skills and do it effectively if we're just trying to all bombard the kids with them. So there are 4 soft skills, and I've asked them to focus on 1: leadership, communication, collaboration, and time management. Those were the 4 that seemed to rise to the top of what business and industry was telling us. Excuse me. This is the best slide right here. Well, almost the best slide. Future plans for CTE. So the first thing that we're going to do is we just went through the new course proposal at Fayetteville High School for the school district, and we're going to offer an internship class. So we're going to work to put those students in jobs that are as closely aligned to their program areas as possible. We've worked very closely with the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce and also with the city of Fayetteville, who've been very supportive of this. The next bullet there, you will see a new skilled trades program at Fayetteville High School. Last month at a workforce development summit north of here, the Northwest Arkansas Council told us that the fastest growing trade in Northwest Arkansas is construction. We need to meet that need. So what we're doing is we're offering this skilled trade program to accommodate that. We will have an introduction to skilled trades, and then we will also offer a concurrent credit materials of construction class for that. We're looking at more industry certifications. We are right now looking at a possible welding certification, and we're also looking at a business plan certification. This is going to be based on what business and industry want, though. So we're going to get their input and then add those for next year. As I said, more concurrent credit offerings. We realize that it's important for our students to have the opportunity to take college credit courses, so we're looking into that, and we're pursuing that more forcefully. Increased number of CTE program completers. We had 195 this year. Last year we're shooting for 200 or more this upcoming year. And then finally, we have a fantastic partnership proposed between Brightwater and the Fayetteville Public Library. And as you know, Brightwater is associated with Northwest Arkansas Community College. We're going to have the opportunity to offer culinary arts classes at the Fayetteville Public Library in their new commercial kitchen there. Our students will get concurrent college credit, and they will also get industry certification exams. I mean, that's just a fantastic opportunity for our kids, and we're just so excited to have that opportunity. And the last slide I'd like to show you here is just a short, it's a very, very short video. It's just a promotional video that we made in the past to kind of show kids about CTE. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions for Lisa Keaton? You look like you may have one. Or got a question face on. Get your question face
okay.
I must have a question face. Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your work. I did have a comment and a question. The comment being, I work with a affordable housing nonprofit, and you know, you mentioned the need for construction trades, and there's so much talk about housing and affordable housing. That conversation is just really heating up here and nationwide, and a big part of that is the cost of skilled trades, of plumbers and HVAC. And so I acknowledge that just because I think that's it's a societal challenge that we might not think of ourselves as solving and having the potential to solve, but I think it's a really cool way to contribute to the world and prepare our kids for really high demand, well-paying jobs.
Absolutely, and teenagers love to have a cause to get behind. They love to be a part of something bigger than them, and I think that's a fantastic idea. Love that suggestion. And
then my question was just with the career development and any early feedback on Naviance and how that is. I'm guessing that plays into the 8th grade class you talked about, and I'm just wondering if there's any early feedback on that.
It absolutely does, and actually I'm meeting with the career development teachers tomorrow. We're going over Naviance to make sure that they're using it as fully as possible. They are utilizing it because the students are doing career exploration projects that they're going to attach to their individual Naviance accounts, and that will follow them into high school, and we can use that later on for some career development, more career exploration. It's essentially going to be a portfolio component that will follow them. So early feedback has been that the teachers loving having all those resources there. They specifically said they love the ability for students to be able to pull up 3 colleges, for instance, and compare them all in one screen. It's so much easier than having to launch individual browser windows to compare that. They love that because they said that's a perfect way to display that information for 8th graders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa, can you tell us what you need from us as a board?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah. We are always striving for awareness of career and technical education. I would love any opportunity that you have to help us with that awareness component. We have a lot of great things going on in career and technical education, and sometimes I do my best to try to publicize it as much as possible, but sometimes word of mouth, one-to-one, is even more powerful. So I would love to ask any chance you get to talk up career and technical education. That would be fantastic.
As we have an ongoing facilities conversation, and I feel like we make good decisions when we get all the information that we can get on the table, and then obviously we have to organize and cut from there. But is there anything on that front that we can that you need from us?
Facilities wise,
I feel like as we talk about as we talk about what that looks like in 2018 and what you envision it looking like going forward with skilled trades and partnerships and how that's working out in Fayetteville and in Northwest Arkansas. And
facilities wise, I will have to say that especially at Fayetteville High School, we have excellent facilities over there. And I think with creative scheduling and making use of rooms during prep periods and everything like that, that we can maximize that. As far as the business and industry component, we are trying to build more intentional contact with business and industry members, and I'm trying to encourage my CTE teachers to do that. It's okay that they have somebody come in and speak to their class, but I would like there to be, we're shooting for a more intentional, long-lasting relationship. And it's not that we're going out to ask for donations or anything like that in business and industry. The most critical piece of information they can give us is feedback. Are we aligning with what you need? Are we providing students with what you need to have a skilled employee in the future? So that's what we're shooting for on that front.
And I feel like I love that you're having your teachers trying to leverage your teachers to do that. Do you feel like there's a structural component in the district that helps you with that right now? I mean, I feel like there's so much interest in the community like in the business community, in having a really strong relationship with especially secondary in the public schools. And then you're very interested in that as well. And I like how we can open the gauge of that pipe so that like a little, like, what can we do there to widen that gauge?
Well, right now we have to have required advisory council meetings twice a year. I would like to look at the configuration of those and pull in more people from business and industry. I would also like to have those occur more frequently. Right now they're very formal meetings, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I would like us to get to a point to where we're meeting so often that it's more comfortable in a more open environment. Because I think that's where we're going to get our most valuable information, is when we reach that comfort level where business and industry can say, you know, maybe you should consider doing this, or in our industry, this is the required certification exam. So I guess the best thing, just encourage people. We have a wealth of resources around here, and my goodness, I've been in this district 3 years, and I've gone and asked business and industry for various things, just information and things like that, and I've never been turned down. I mean, that's just the wonderful community that we have.
We do.
So I know people want to help. Teachers are sometimes a little hesitant to contact somebody they don't know.
Right.
But
and they have a very big job to do already.
They have a lot to do. They have a lot to do. But just the interactions that we've had, whenever a teacher has gone and asked somebody, they've always said, yes, I will be glad to come give you information on that. So, or whatever we've asked of them. And it's always been information or feedback or something like that.
This is really exciting. This is a really important area, and I'm going to maybe speak out of turn a little bit to point out how important it is or can be. When I first came to town 10 years back, a principal was complaining to me about, I think about 3 years earlier, they'd closed West Campus, and this person was convinced, which was a very good VOTEC center. This person was just convinced that it raised the dropout rate. So I had a really good RA at the time, and I got him to crunch the numbers 3 different ways, and every way showed that principal was right. The dropouts went up by about a quarter after West Campus got closed. I mean, I think these kind of programs are just very important for the economy, but they're also really important for connecting some kids to school, for giving them a really important reason to be there, a really important part of the future. Now, I've said how important you are. Now let me ask something maybe a little less friendly. I was talking to one of the old timers in the AP program, maybe a week or two back, I can't remember, and they told me something real interesting I hadn't even known, that I guess they, as they built the program, which, gosh, 30 years ago was 3 classes, now it's 29 or 30, they would survey kids to see what the kids wanted in the program, what kind of courses they might want next. And then they've also done something else really interesting for years and years. They tracked down the graduates and surveyed them the December of their freshman years in college, the ones who go to college, and asked them, looking back, what were their most valuable courses and the ones that really meant a lot to them in college. And are you guys able, and I know this is kind of tricky, although Ms. Dugan, Dr. Dugan can probably help, have you guys been able to do any of that kind of surveying of the students to get a sense of what they might want, and then when they graduate, what kind of things they've found useful? Well,
we survey our students a lot, and I have to say that our CTE teachers in the districts, they have very good relationships with our students. Our students love these teachers, so the CTE teachers take a lot of feedback from the students, and some have actually done surveys. Now, as far as graduation, we are required by the state for our program completers. We have to track them after they graduate, and I have to report that back to the state. I will say we have very strong results from that. A majority of our students are in further education, so that could be a technical college, post-secondary community college. They're doing some type of education. The next level down, kids going straight into the workforce, and there's value in that because we've hopefully added to that, to their value in the workforce. So we do track that information. I have started crunching that a little deeper to see what we need to do, but the big thing with CTE is it's not like it used to be in the old days, and we have to constantly evolve and change and be dynamic. So kids love that. Kids love being engaged, and they love these courses because they look forward to doing something. that makes them happy. So
That's really cool. I think any down the road, maybe informally, any data you could give us on that, I just think would be fascinating. I think it's really important work.
I would love
and
to
it's
share
always,
that.
you know, the programs are always changing, right? We're always adapting a little bit to meet the needs, and that's cool. And sometimes things don't work out, and then you fix them and you move on. And I think everybody accepts that, but I think it would be really cool to see some of that data.
I'd be glad to do that.
Cool.
One more thing, I wanted to make sure you knew that the board met in October to establish some objectives and goals, and then to kind of trickle that down into strategies. And I assume it's been communicated to you, but it needs to be repeated that you know, one of our strategies has been to put kind of shine a light on the CTE area of our district, specifically in the area of internships and soft skills and trade certifications, but then also in community service opportunities. So we're working on kind of figuring out how we measure success in that realm, but it's still very encouraging because in your presentation you mentioned all 4 of those things. So you're right on track with the objectives that we set as a board just a couple of months ago. So thank you for.
Well, thank you as a board for setting those goals. Thank you for investing in our children that way, because we greatly appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it very much. Okay, next we have under old business FHS parking recommendations, and I believe that's going to be Dr. Slocum. This was an item that was before us last month, and
I'm going to start with the P word.
Lots of options that were thrown around.
So many options. So this is recommendation of those options is what we're going to be talking about. Just as a recap or review, we looked at what we have for current parking. That's a review of what we looked at last month. We do have a lottery system that's in place for juniors. Approximately 325 seniors and 130 juniors asked for parking this year. So that's kind of our thermometer. We do have a partnership with U of A, and those spaces that we have available in September, again, will be ending in the upcoming year because those are being converted into dorm parking for the future for the University of Arkansas. We would like to improve the current parking lot that we have, meaning making what we have better. Looking at restriping all of the existing lots, numbering all of the spaces, creating some type of code system, and that would have to be worked out, of course, with the high school leadership to say how could this work best in terms of management, what would that look like, filling the potholes, expanding the exits, including additional exits for students, and then removing the fence between the administration and the students. We feel like that's not only just a physical barrier, it's taking up additional spots that we might be able to maximize. And then extending the parking lot forward, which could potentially encompass some of the parking pavilion. This is recommendation that we would like to go forward with. Option A, this would give us 63 additional parking spaces behind this building where we are now. It would also expand an exit, which surveys from parents and from students have said that's a major pain point. It would also allow us to pave the road back there, which is currently gravel. So that is option A for 346, which is $54.92 a space. We would also like to do option D. I didn't change these because I'm trying to correlate to what you've seen before in an attempt not to provide or be confusing. This is FHS's front parking addition. We'd like to add about 70 spaces here. And after further conversation with Dr. Dostal, one of the things that we've really had concerns over is separating 3 different groups. The students don't want to drive with parents, the parents don't want to drive with students, and the buses don't want to drive with either. And so trying to separate those 3 groups, this would allow us to look at some type of loop process for the buses so that we could pull all of the buses in, load all of the buses, and let all of the buses leave without that parking interference that we're having right now. And you would think if you see 12 buses parked and stacked among one another that a student might not pull in between those, but surprisingly, they do. And so this would hopefully alleviate some of those concerns we have in terms of safety. This is $309,000, which is $46.16 a parking space.
Go back if you wouldn't
yes,
mind.
Sir.
So that what you're saying then is by connecting those lots and adding the spaces,
you're going to create it where the buses can actually come in and go all the way across the face of,
exactly,
or the front of.
exactly. Really maximizing that space, and we feel like we can even double stack them if we're only loading buses and only moving buses at that point. That we could double stack the buses that we have. This row of buses closest to the building turning right, this row of buses on the exterior turning left, and so loading, everybody getting on and everybody going out. So it is a quick turnaround. It will have to be definitely choreographed. It will not go smooth the first couple of days, I promise. But as everyone gets the feel of the new traffic patterns and the awareness, it will help parents that are trying to drop kids off in the place where they already drop them off. It will just take buses out of the equation. So it will hopefully separate those three groups.
So this could just hugely relieve congestion, it would seem like.
No, sir, it won't help. I can't take the I can't take the participants out of the equation. Everyone's still going to come, and unfortunately, we're all going to come at the same time. So I can't change that, but I can change the fact of who you're parking next to and interacting with. Maybe to take the desire that we have for some of our students, regardless of how many times we go across, and we cover the safety aspects of them parking or cutting in between buses. And the buses are big. They can't see every angle that's around them.
But it will help the traffic on Stadium Drive.
Definitely.
It will prevent. That's the big problem. So
definitely.
We'll solve that.
Definitely.
I recall when the building was being designed and,
yes, sir.
and layout, there had been some discussion about using Buchanan as the stacking. In fact, there was even going to be kind of a kind of pull off and then make your way into the parking lot. And whether it was cost or it could have been very both, with the city planning folks that that model or approach wasn't what actually prevailed in the final design. So this is an improvement. Do we know how much of this involves? I know we always have to go to the city about any changes in construction and stuff.
I've had those conversations, preliminary conversations. I cannot ask for a better partner in a couple of people. Dr. Colbert has been fix it, which is great. The city has also been let's fix it and been a great partner. And the high school staff, the administrators at the high school have also been that same mentality of this is something that we need to address. I think that in terms of where some of the utilities were running and how some of the electricity was running is the reason that we ended up with the initial plan that we had. I think that this will give us some easement, and definitely I can't, of course, like we talked about with who's coming and when they're coming, but it will definitely help in terms of the coordination of that. The other thing that is not on this plan is we talked last time about what can the city do, and we can apply for the city to come and provide additional parking spaces, and I've done that with Stone and with a couple of other streets that go that as you head toward the back of the property of the high school, and also as you come forward. The difficulty is they cannot be marked for student parking only. So what could happen is we could get additional curb parallel parking, and it's also filled up by university students prior to the arrival of high school students. So it can't be zoned for us, but that is something that the city is looking at, and they're putting on their watch list also. So that's been also submitted.
And would help slow traffic too.
Yes, that's an excellent point. The other thing we'd like to do is option E. This would add 67 additional parking spaces, $211,000 for 3,200 a space. And this is honestly just looking at what we already have and reconfiguring it to make it flow better, make the exits flow better, make the entrance flow better. We feel like we do have a safety issue. Parents have reported the same, kids have reported the same, and this should alleviate some of those concerns, at the same time providing some clearly designated spaces, and also, frankly, in the front of the parking lot, rebuilding that wall that is in the process of crumbling. It needs some love and attention anyway, and so we will address all of those issues at the same time. This is a total of $866,000. This, of course, in capital is an estimate. It is not, I don't have bids, but I'm giving you our best guess based on the information we know today. This would be, of course, funds that we would be seeking from the building fund. This would increase, including options A, D, and E, would increase parking spaces by 200. We did have 525 student requests in 2018. In our survey, we had 770 respondents that also said that they would like parking. So this gets us much closer to where we need to be in terms of parking. So questions that you have should be, how many spaces is that? I'm doing the math, that's 646. And additional solutions, which we've already talked about and we've already discussed, is we need to advertise other features that we have available besides getting in your own solo vehicle and driving to work or to school, which is the district school bus, establishing and looking at some e-bike or scooter programs, seeking potential partnerships where we can partner with other people who are interested in that, partnering with the U of A Transit that's already free, it's already an established system, it already runs. And then we are still going to have further discussion on the shuttle option to see if that's something that we really need to move forward with the increased parking. Is that something that's necessary? And then, of course, still seeking current partnerships with churches. So questions that you have, that's the recommendation.
I think the important number here is there were 525 requests, and we're going to have 646 spaces, you know, with this, if we were to approve these changes. So, I mean, I just think this is a great solution. I think the research you've done, I mean, I would kiss your feet, but I'm not going to do that. I know I've said that before.
Need a pedicure. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, that would be a little awkward. But, I mean, I would do it. I don't care. I mean, it's just been an ongoing conversation, and we're just so grateful that you've been willing to look at all of these alternatives. But and all of these, I mean, a few of the ones that you presented last month didn't seem very realistic and wise to me, but these three seem very very, you know, easy is not the right word, but the easiest sensible. Of the option. Yeah, sensible.
We really feel like they will alleviate the majority of the concerns that everyone we've spoken to, all of the parties have spoken to
with
in
the
terms of
additional entries and all of that. I'm sorry, Bob, one more question. The one, this parking down here between the football and baseball field is not included on that one picture. Is that because we've pretty much maxed out what we can park there? That,
and also keep in mind that there is a task force that's going on currently for looking at athletic designation, and so we didn't want to be stepping on toes.
Okay.
This is something that I'm hopeful that you'll say, yes, please move forward, and it's something I would like to start on and begin the process on. That task force is still going. Those recommendations, I'm sure, will be coming forward shortly, but these are things that we currently own. We know how to do them. We know they will work. I can give you the best estimate on how many spaces we'll get. It will definitely alleviate a pressure point, and I don't think that pressure point is going to get better next year. In fact, I know it's going to be worse because I already understand what the parking situation is going to be with U of A.
Dr. Slocum, can this work be done in the summer? It's
a great question. Yeah. So our first step is for you to say yes, run, Forrest, and me to start, and then get after it as quickly as I can. It will depend on schedules. I will say the cost of construction is not going down. Right. We're in a really positive model for that, and so it's getting on schedules, it's getting things lined out, and for us, the sooner the better. We don't want to do it too soon in terms of temperature because we do want it to be done well, we want it to be done right, so we want to move to the place where we have that happy medium, not too cold, not too hot, and then also not encompassing what's happening with the high school. So that would definitely be our goal.
Okay. I was asked by somebody to ask. So it would appear that all the seniors who want parking will be able to get it.
Correct.
Along with lots of other kids who have needs as well. So
based on who applied this year. Right. Now, of course, this would be a new approach and a new process. But being able to have those numbered spaces and knowing this is who should be parking here and isn't parking here, and being able to have that conversation would make a huge difference. So even if there were more students and maybe I did opt to park in one of my other 4 permitted places, we would at least know that so that we could reappropriate the spot to someone else. Yeah.
All right, any further questions for Dr.
Yes, I'll just chime in with a thank you as well, and appreciate the creativity of utilizing the existing spots and finding room for more parking where there already is parking, and not having to lose any facilities to make it happen. I appreciate the ongoing effort into looking at alternatives as well. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to mention one thing that I haven't heard brought up before is that you know, no one really knows what the impact of autonomous vehicles are going to be, but a lot of people think that there will be serious demand reduction for parking in the next 20 years because you'll basically be able to get a driverless Uber and get dropped off, and it'll be the easiest. It'll be super cheap and easy. So it's just something to think about as we continue monitoring parking, because no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but
Elon does, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Elon will guide us.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will.
Help us. The bike component of it for students who live within biking distance, you know, the city's experimenting with a lot of, you know, alternative bike lane designations, and I'm not sure, you know, I've not seen anything specific about, you know, this as a destination or ways to improve that, but it would be helpful. Both my boys rode their bikes on a number of occasions to the high school, and it was, you know, not the easiest place to get to, depending on which neighborhood you're going through, and coming through the university campus. I asked for, and I got it somewhere on a text, the number of kids who ride bus, you know, the bus in the morning and the afternoon. It's more than I think probably some folks would expect. I think it's over 700 in the afternoons, 500 something in the mornings.
Yes.
I don't know what you do to make bus riding cool again, like it ever was, but I think that
super
encouragement.
Cool.
It's very cool, Tim.
Well, it was for me up to a point.
Was for me too. Yeah.
I know when we've had these discussions with parents about, you know, well, you need more parking, and when I would be the one person saying, you know, these great vehicles, they're not autonomous, but you know, if you can get 40 or 50 kids on,
they might be one
vehicle,
day. That's a good point.
Well, I think these are all great options. That the moving of buses, I think you're right. It's gonna take some getting used to for a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And the staging of all this, you know, I don't know if anything happens, you know, by spring break of next year. So the restriping will not take place in the area between football and baseball at this point. That's not one of the areas that's being.
We will have restriping that's happening in this section here. Sorry, in E. That all of what you see there will be striped.
I spoke with John L. about this a little bit yesterday, but I just wanted to run it by you too. As we separate our different groups and we have students there, and we have faculty in the front, and we have parents and visitors off to the side, I just want to make sure that we are taking care of ADA stuff.
ADA, definitely.
ADA,
so
that's what I meant, ADA.
I knew what you meant.
Thank you.
So in this drawing, one of the things that will have to be part of this is we have van accessibility, we have to have car accessibility, we have to have components.
This is a pointer.
Oh, wow. Oh, very fun. Yay. In this area or in this area, we'll have to designate which one's easier for the visitor who's coming. And the same is true here in this situation with this building in this location here. Yeah. So we will address. I know it doesn't work on that one. Yes. In this section here, we'll also have to have that same conversation. And so we'll have to have the conversation on both ends. How do I get in if I'm going to the high school? If I'm a parent and I'm visiting and I'm just checking out my child, where do I go? What does that look like if I'm coming into this building? We'll have to address both of those conversations.
That's on the.
This is the easy part is you voting. The hard part is then implementing what we're talking about and then creating the rules and the procedures at which we will do that. Then the next part's going to be communicating that information so that if I'm a driver on the road, I know, am I going left or right and how do I get there safely? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I think the one, and you've probably already had some conversation, but the one part of this whole puzzle that I still don't feel 100% comfortable with is the student pickup. I know we're talking about moving it back to Bulldog Boulevard, but we're still gonna, even with this additional exit, they're still gonna be coming out onto Bulldog.
I know.
So I just think maybe we need to look at some alternatives for maybe over on Buchanan where we could do the student pickup. I don't know.
We have that. One of the things that is a difficulty is that main entrance, so that, God forbid,
Buses.
if we were to have an emergency, it's that
yeah.
emergency access. So we have to keep some areas clear at all times. In some cases, we can have that moment of congestion as long as it breathes on a regular basis. So what we'll do from this is, if this is approved, our next step will be then to start having the conversations of organization, start having the procedural things, having the conversations with the city, having the conversation with the engineers, and then moving forward with the specifications of what that needs to look like. And then frankly, then we will start the show. We'll have our first day of school, and that's when we'll know if it was a great or a bad plan, and then we'll modify based on what that is. So it's very normal in terms of growing pains, but we would much rather be having this conversation than having conversations about decreased enrollment or something else.
Exactly.
Of that nature.
It's
a great problem to have.
Yeah. But I do feel like this is our kid, I mean, the majority of the kids getting picked up are ninth graders and ninth grade parents.
Very much so.
And so it's just always they're, so unfortunate that their first experience with the high school is sitting in line down Stadium Drive or wrapped sometimes down onto MLK. And I mean, that kind of works its way out after a couple of weeks, but I do feel like we need to really, think that through very carefully.
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
Quick question that just came to mind. Some of those like gray spaces up there and the ends of the parking lanes, are there areas to cost out trees for the parking lot that wouldn't reduce the space count? Like, I'm looking at those gray areas and the bumps at the end.
If we will have to work through the arborist, and so if we have an area where we are going through the removal process, or if it's going to affect a drip line of a tree or something of that nature, we'll work with the city to determine what that ratio of exchange is to be able to replace and remove. That will be a conversation that they will help us in terms of what that will look like and where and how big and all of those things. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we have, what we have before us is a recommendation for option A, D, and E together. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
So that is, unless we have further discussion, we can.
I'm happy to move approval of the recommendation as presented for the parking enhancements at FHS.
Okay, we have a motion. And
Second.
A second, right here, to move forward with the recommendation from administration. Is there any more discussion from the board? Any discussion from the floor?
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion passes 6-0. And we get Dr. Slocum again up here for RFQ on facility condition assessment and guaranteed saving performance district energy audit.
Yes, sir. So this is I'm not bringing you a quote, but I'm bringing you an ask. And the ask is to allow me to move forward to release 2 requests for proposals. And the first one that I'd like to talk about is the energy audit in terms of guaranteed energy savings. What this would do would allow us to move forward with seeking an RFQ and to determine the priorities for us to be able to cash flow the potential energy savings. So the net effect should be cost neutral over time, but it would be to create a long-term plan to begin transforming the district a piece at a time, or as we are able to financially, with recouping those savings. So typically it is you make the investment in and then you receive the investment through savings. And what the guaranteed part of that is, we started with a much lesser version of this, but as we've researched and we've read and I've talked to more people, this guaranteed investment approach allows us to have some type of agreement on the front end with the company to say, if you cannot deliver these results, they have to reimburse you whatever your initial investment was. And so it provides you similar to what you do with a construction management in a good construction project, having that guarantee on the front end. So this is something I think that we had the conversation about, do we include the high school, do we not? And from speaking with the experts that are in this particular field, all have unanimously recommended that we include the high school. The high school was at that point, that tipping point in where we were in technology. Price points have come down, things have changed, and so it's from their view seen as advantageous to, if we're going to do this process, to include all of our facilities so that we can really prioritize who we are actually serving right now, which includes the high school. So questions on the energy audit portion. The other RFQ that I'm seeking is for a facilities condition assessment. An FCA, this is also to seek an RFQ for us to determine priorities. We want to create a long-term plan to address opportunities for improvement that we have across our district, and we want to know that in a phase and a priority. I'm asking for the RFQ to be, I've written the RFQ in two different ways. One is phases that we would move through in terms of seeking improvement on our capital assets. The other is through priority, to let us know this is an item that's critical, meaning if you're looking at doing something, this is an item you would want to address first, to less so. And so having some type of ratio. The other would be that these two processes, they're working separate because they're two different skill sets that you're needing for these two things to happen, but they also work in tandem. So where they can have overlap and inform one another, we would want the two companies and our team to all work together to see how they all work and flow together, because one might be contingent upon the other. One might bring up an area of opportunity that the other might not see. So, my funding. Both of these projects we would like to proceed with in the current fiscal year. I'd like to use building funds to be reimbursed from proceeds from the second lien bond issue, and that conversation I know is still coming forward. We've had our financial advisor who's come here. This is a conversation we've spent a lot of time with processing in our division, and of course with Dr. Colbert, and so that is my next request, is to be allowed to release 2 RFQs.
Do we know how long that process would be to get the proposals back? Would it be a couple months?
I think that it's going to take us some time, because I think we want to do it well. We want to do it right. My first step is it's one of those things where you can have conversations, but it's really not appropriate to have a lot of conversations until you give me permission to do that. So my next step would be for you to say, yes, release it. I would release it. I know about the cost of the FCA is going to run us between $200 and $250. We would release both of those RFPs. We would have the conversations with them, and they would then provide us with a timeline. They would fit us into wherever the schedule is. So we wouldn't be able to bump someone who's already in their planning timeline, but it would at least be able for me to be able to bring you some information back to say, here's what the expected outcome would be.
Okay, so that could be possibly in the spring.
That is our plan. Okay. I would love to have to be able to create you a facilities master plan that is truly reflective of where we are in our facilities. Having the data to do that would be very advantageous. Then being able to take this information from energy, this information from facilities, put it together, and then create a facilities master plan that we can then begin working an actual plan that has some context and data behind it.
I feel like this is sort of a question for Dr. Slocum and sort of a question for us. I'm not sure that I totally understand how, like you're talking about, we have one option where the company creates a facilities priority list for us, and one option where the company creates a sequential plan for us. Where does our decision making around facilities fit in terms of? I mean, I feel like if we're looking at the district, like we have some buildings that we know clearly need a lot of work. We're not sure what we want to do with those buildings. Does that make sense to you? Like, at what point do we say, like, do we build a plan that's sequential and includes revitalization of those buildings when we haven't even decided whether those are going to remain district buildings, or like, does that make sense?
I think I'm following. So at this stage, we're going to be asking for a kind of a state of the district's assets. We've already in some preliminary work and having toured those facilities that we the district administration was telling us, or either we're out of space, or just the age and condition is at a stage where we can't overlook it any longer. So I think it really does come down to Dr. Colbert and his team as they prioritize the array of needs we're trying to meet. If there's a building that capacity-wise we're not able to accommodate all the students who are moving into a certain part of town, I would think that might be one of those things that rises toward the top if we're going to address a capacity issue. So it's kind of not just a wish list, but it's certainly looking at our building leadership to tell us as they negotiate amongst themselves what the priorities are, and we can't afford to do everything in one year or 2 years, but looking at a staged plan. Now you're talking about buildings that aren't necessarily being used, or at least not their fullest capacity. I think that fits right into the mix of all of that. So
I
if
guess
the recommendation's coming down saying that building, and if it's Jefferson, for instance, is the one that has the greatest needs, well, that's up to the the district leadership and to present to us, is that facility in such a state, and is its future use to us worth that investment? And then we hash that out.
Are you asking whether those discussions would be had at board level?
Well, I mean, I think the discussion that Tim is talking about certainly happens at the board level. I think what I'm wondering about is if we release, and I might be too far down the road with it, but if we release the RFQ and we get it back, then we choose a company and they do that process for us, and we choose let's say we choose a sequential model, and they take Jefferson and they work through all the reno plans of Jefferson. That company seems to have spent a lot of time on something that maybe we'll do, and maybe we won't. I mean, is that just how that works, and that's fine, and that happens first, and then we make our decision second? How does that sequence work?
Well,
it's an assessment. So their job is to come in. What we would be hiring them to do is to come in and say, they would say, what assets would you like us to review? We give them a list of all of our assets, and we walk with them and go through through the process as they're evaluating assets. They then prioritize based on that particular building. What we do at this level is take all of that data set, and then we create a puzzle from that with the information from the energy audit, and we say, okay, based on this is what we have, and then our job is to bring a report back to you to say, this is what the report said. Based on this information, this is what we're prioritizing going forward. This is what we would recommend at this point or that point. If in that conversation you then say, I don't want to keep this building, then the answer would be, it's no longer a priority, and we move someone up in succession. We are going to have so many things to prioritize, that won't be a problem of who's going to be next. I think that the issue is going to be determining when we move forward and when we don't move forward, what do we move forward with and what do we not? And that, I think, is a conversation we have to have, because Dr. Colbert's going to give me the directive to correct it, and I need to know, what do you want corrected and what do you not want corrected? At this point, it's the data that I'm trying to bring you back.
What they bring us back, if they prioritize and they sequence, they do it per building, not for the whole district. It's like if they looked at this building.
I'm asking, the RFQ is asking for, and it can be rewritten clearly. The RFQ is asking for both per building, what needs to happen in this particular context of this particular structure, and then what needs to happen among all of the context of all of the structure. So we're seeking their personal expertise to be able to prioritize per building and then per district based on the assets that are given. Now, you might also say, don't include this asset. In that case, they wouldn't be part of the conversation.
Your recommendation is that we include all of our assets.
I would recommend, if we're going to do it, let's do it correctly. Because I think what will happen if we don't is we'll get to the end of the process and someone will say, why didn't we include, or I wish we had included, and at that point the process is finished and hasn't been taken into account with all of these other factors. And if we own it, it should be assessed.
But it's not a Jenga type process where they take all the time to do the sequence,
right,
and then we take out this chunk where there's an issue with the whole. It's fine. It's just
no. And I think it is when you do it per district, But I think if we do it, if we do it both directions, if we do it per building asset that we have, then we can have that conversation. Then we also have the district option.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
So, in the example of Jefferson, will the assessment give us a cost estimate for renovation that then allows us to make decisions like?
The way we can write the RFQ either way. How I have it written today, right now, is that it would include cost estimates. I think that if we're going to do an analysis and we're going to do it per building and we're going to do it per district, I think that it is really difficult for Dr. Colbert to be able to prioritize without any clue as to how much are we talking. When we say that means this, what does that actually mean? Really little words can have a big financial impact. So I think knowing that on the front end just helps to have the additional data. However, if you say don't do that, then I will also take it out of the RFQ. I just think it's an important component to include.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
I'm sorry, Keaton. Were you still talking?
I was going to ask a follow.
Maybe the same thing I was going to ask. So you go ahead.
Okay. In terms of our future and expansion potential or not potential and cost there is in our older buildings, I understand that's somewhat of a somewhat specialized skill set. What are your thoughts on how we treat that when we seek a service provider?
I think the service provider will be more letting us know what the deficiencies are and what we might have to correct. I think if it gets to the point where we're talking restoration and we actually are moving forward, and I've been given the directive, move forward to correct these deficiencies in this particular building, that's a very different type of contractor where we would seek for that particular job. That's a different CM. It's a totally different approach. It's a very different skill set than say new construction or something of that nature. What these people would be doing is really auditing what we have, giving us a cost estimate of what we have for the individual components, and then us making decisions from that.
I guess in terms of RFQ language, though, is there a way to ensure that cost estimate is coming from someone with experience with those older structures?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is the larger overview, and you're talking about Jefferson. I don't know that it's not that it's not 300 years old. We're not talking
Thankfully.
archaeology
No, sir.
and excavation, and so buildings of that age in our community, including houses that maybe some of us live in,
Mm-hmm.
There are people nearby who deal
Absolutely.
with
Absolutely.
I guess just to just cut to the chase. What I'm worried about is that a firm that only has experience with new construction may not
Mm-hmm.
know have a firm grip on the cost estimate.
I think what we will do is when we go through the proposal process and we go through and look and evaluate, those are the things that the district leadership team would be looking for, is understanding the confines of what we have, what our budget will allow for, and at the same time what buildings and assets we do possess. It's not that we don't understand that we're not going into this blind. We understand we're going to receive a lot of data from this process on both ends, energy and this. We have a lot of work to do, and we know that. But I think having the mindset of being open to what those options are, Dr. Colbert has been really clear with that in terms of partnering and making sure that we have someone who does have credibility, because it is a special skill set. And so us moving forward, bringing options forward for you, we want to take in all of the factors that we have, and one of our buildings is very, it is a historic building.
That was a long interruption of Nico.
So I think.
Is that the same question?
It wasn't. No, believe it or not, no. Keith lost me early on that question. No, my question is that and of course all of us are having the same thought. but when you've asked them to come back with an estimate of what a renovation would cost, you know, with Jefferson in particular, we don't exactly know how we intend to use it. So the renovation of that building would vary based on
the intended use.
The intended use, and so it's sort of like a cart before the horse kind of thing, trying to figure out, maybe that goes back to Megan's.
That was my question, is where the cart is.
I think that comes with the directives from us as we're giving the tour and as we're having the conversations. If this were to be purposed as a school building tomorrow, what would that look like? If this were to be purposed as a set of offices, what would that look like? If this were to be, you know, it's our job to propose to them potential options and then them come back with the most information so we can make decisions.
And I would suspect that the configurations aren't going to be that drastic, except for the school and the office. Outside of that, if it's you know, a variety of different types of uses, it's the school one that is going to have the most. Well, it's going to have the regulation, the state regs that are attached to it. It's going to have elevators, library, cafeteria,
ADA,
you know, all those type of things. Any other use is probably going to be closer,
definitely,
to being, you know, fairly equal.
And some of those will have the same impact regardless. Parking, in some cases for ADA would be the same. However, if it's a school, the parking would look very different for an office versus.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready to move that we approve these RFQ requests, though.
Okay, we have a motion to
approve
the RFQ request and a second from Megan. Is there any more discussion, Keaton?
I just wanted to touch on the energy piece and just express appreciation for all your research on that. And I'm really glad that we are moving forward with the investment grade audit. I think it's an opportunity to address some deferred maintenance potentially and be cash flow positive. You know, I think it'll be at least cost neutral and probably generate some immediate savings. So I'm really excited about that, and I think it's also an opportunity to tell our stewardship story, both, you know, financially and environmentally, with the community. I think it's something we should celebrate and also incorporate, and, you know, think about how we might be able to incorporate it into the science curriculum and what educational opportunities there might be.
I forget what the percentage that Glenda always tells us the utility costs are, but it's significant enough to know that when we're dealing with salaries and our debt, and then those fixed costs in utilities, there's very little left to play with at the end of the day, and so. There's some things I don't want to skimp on, but energy savings would certainly be one that I think we could certainly, if there is a path forward to save and to use funds in the future for other things, that would be a great win for this district.
Definitely, yes, sir.
Okay, so we have. Are there any other discussion from the board? Sorry. Any discussion from the floor?
Thank you.
I like getting thank yous from the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. 6-0. The motion for issuance of both RFQs pass.
Thank you very much.
All right, and next we have the 5 policies that we reviewed and talked about at the last meeting, and I believe Dr. Ben's going to come back up and.
Yes, President Eichmann and members of the board, we have 5 policies that are second reading tonight. So we had first reading discussion last month, and be happy to answer any questions if I can.
I'll just mention I'm pretty happy with everything. Was reading over the bullying policy, and something struck me. It's not really completely relevant to the discussion tonight, but just in general, I think we do a really good job on that. That said, on limiting it, I should say, not on bullying, on limiting bullying. That said, I often feel like outside of the schools that my kids attend or have attended recently, I just don't get a sense of how well we do, and I just think it's generally something to look at down the road. I think we should think about, doing climate surveys, getting a sense for the kids and the parents of whether whether they perceive serious problems or not. So just as something to sort of think about going forward. They're easy to do. My gosh, Sarah McKenzie at the university can probably pull a dozen off the shelf for us, but there's other folks who could too. So it is something that I think it would be great to think about going forward, and not something to have necessarily out there, but just something internally for our own continuous improvement. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there as something to think about.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's just part of we've talked multiple times about a need for a culture and climate survey, and I think that definitely falls within that realm.
I like the idea of breaking it down by school, though. I think that's good. I think we've talked about it in terms of like the district, and I think that especially in situations where we have like at the elementary level, we have so many schools, and so those are very different cultures and climates. I like that idea.
We do have discipline data from a couple of different resources. One is from eSchool, which all schools enter in, and then we have a product that we have internally that not all schools, most of the schools are using for tracking their discipline, and we can have those reports by building.
I have a question about that. When we look at the ESSA reports, that's one of the, like when you go into the thing, you can drop that down, the discipline stuff, and I don't know if anybody else has dropped down the discipline stuff, but it doesn't feel
user friendly.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm gonna just use the word accurate.
Right.
Like it. Are those systems synced up? Like, what is it? The ESSA version of discipline, does that have anything to do with our internal system of discipline? What does ESSA know about our discipline?
Well, as you might guess from the fact that we have that system, and then we have another system that not all the schools are using, a goal is to make a uniform system or come up with a uniform system that would be more helpful to us. The state aspect of it, we don't have a choice in that. Now, the way the data is entered might vary from school to school, but and also the way the discretion at the administrative level is bound to be different from building to building.
And it just seems like we would be so disincentivized on reporting our discipline to ESSA. I mean, like I would almost. We want to be legal and accurate. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I feel like some of the stuff that we might want to keep track of at a like, is this a bullying-free school? Like, how are we doing with bullying? Like, wouldn't maybe make the ESSA cut for what gets reported? Does that feel fair?
Right. I think I agree. I think we can have a uniform system for data.
And also like track things as internally that don't get that don't maybe meet the cut for external tracking.
Right. Thank you.
Questions for Dr. Ben on any of the 5 policies? As usual, we can adopt these as a group unless somebody wants to do them individually.
I move approval of the revisions to these district policies as presented.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the floor? All right. Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion's passed 6-0. And with no further business, this concludes the final meeting of the year.
Woo 2018.
See you next year.
I'm laughing.